Welcome to our very first VeVe Roundtable live premiere, and I have an amazing panel of people with me here today. And let's just go around the room and quickly do an introduction. Obviously, I'm Corey, your host. Next, we have Diana. We've got David Quinn, writer and creator of The Addiction, amongst many other. Wow, your thumb pops up. You have like an animated thing. That's awesome. We've got David Yu, CEO, co-founder of VeVe, and none other than the illustrious Vincent Zurzolo. Metropolis Comics, ComicConnect. If you like comics and you like to collect things, Vincent is your man. All right, so we got a lot of things to cover in the show today. And to do that, I'm going to pass the torch right on over to Diana.
Hello, everyone. Well, we are really excited to talk about some special things today. And firstly, let's talk about Mila's soup dumplings. We have some amazing dumplings that Corey is going to potentially eat on screen.
It's going to happen.
And we also have a special 15% discount for all our viewers today using the code VeVe15. And get your dumplings on. Next, we also will be talking about The Addiction number 2. It's going to be such an amazing thing to talk about, especially given how amazing number 1 went. And finally, we've also got the recently launched VeVe Comics. It was an amazing launch at South by Southwest. We've got David Yu to talk about all things VeVe Comics with us. David, could you share a little bit about VeVe Comics? How did it come about? What was the vision for VeVe Comics?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a remarkable, success for VeVe, obviously. And first, when the VeVe collectible app was introduced, a few months later, we thought, wouldn't it be a great idea that it's our users who collect the 3D collectibles can have a way to collect comic. And we obviously started to launch off with the Marvel number 1s, and predominantly has been very centric focus and back title issues of what's been out of print. And halfway through, we thought, a lot of our audience would love to see some of the newer what we call it, the frontless issues of comic, which is the day-to-day releases from your local comic store. And so they came about. It took us about a good 15 months to put this whole deal together, from the start of it to the launch and selecting the title to be part of it, the reading experience. And it has to be a brand new build, as you know, when you go to VeVe.me/comics. And yeah, that really what we have delivered on that short space of 15 months.
Amazing. And was this always something you had intended for, VeVe as a whole? Did you always want to get into front listing comics and digital comics for collectors out there?
Yeah, I as a collector myself and a reader of comic, I envision that, the whole world should have a day-to-day release throughout. One of the more interesting things around the digital comics is, as you probably will know, there's other places out there in the marketplace, like Comixology, or now also known as Amazon. But what we wanted to add an extra layer is really that collectability. And because a lot of people love to read it, they buy a subscription or they download a new release copy. But VeVe allows you to actually own a limited edition cover of that. And it was quite interesting how the scope of the idea, with the help of Marvel, really expanded, going from just one of your normal regular on-shelf cover into transforming that into rarities with different varieties in, color treatment or different artworks. And we categorize them from the commons, which is what you see in the book stands, to your secret rare, where right now some of them are only 40th edition available through the minting through the blockchain. So it's very exciting to work through that whole entire process seamlessly. And in a way, we kind of knew our audience wanted this product out there. And because they go to Comic-Con, they go to shows, they meet some of these new up-and-coming talent artists, and, they don't see their work very often in VeVe. Now, this comic offers that opportunity for collectors to collect their favorite artist cover as well.
My question is, we've got Vincent and we've got David Q in here. They're not up and coming. They are tried and tested and true. And obviously Marvel was our launch partner for VeVe Comics, so everything on there is Marvel. Could eventually we see other imprints or other publishers on VeVe Comics, David?
Yeah. We're very fortunate to obviously have Marvel as our first publisher on VeVe Comics. Obviously, they trusted us from the work that we have worked together for a number of years, and we wanted to ensure that we go out with a big bang. And now what we're doing is starting to get other brands, just outside the Marvel universe. So definitely Addictions are on our target list. We're working with a number of publishers, talking to them, ironing out some of the licensing deals. And I believe that we will have 20th Century Fox with their publication and their IP joining VeVe Comics very soon. Starting, I believe, the Planet of the Apes. Obviously, from that family, you're going to have the Predators, you're going to have the Aliens, and hopefully, that library will extend. So very excited to see this ongoing. Our job is not just to have Western comics, where we are working and talking to manga, other anime type of related IP onto VeVe. In fact, we possibly will have localized content for different parts of the world. For China, there will be a localized Chinese version of their favorite comic and their favorite comic artists, how people grew up with them. So definitely VeVe is just really at the beginning, and we're working out, what the demand that is like. But in a lot of the Asia world, parts of the Asia, digital comic reader, it's a huge market. People read on subway when they're on train going to work. In particular in Japan, you see, if you ever travel in Japan, a lot of people on the train, they pretty much have their iPhone closest to them reading through. So it is very well common accepted as digital product. And
yeah, that's so amazing to see just how everyone has taken to digital comics. Vincent and David, what are your thoughts around digital comics? I mean, you both had a start in physical comics. What do you think about, digital collecting and digital comic? Is it the future?
Well, if you're gonna let me speak first, I'll be short and to the point. These days, when I'm writing something, I'm thinking of 360 degrees of reaching an audience. There's going to be a TV pitch, there's going to be a film pitch, there's going to be digital. Maybe there might even be physical licensing. Since Faust, I've been splitting my time between working for traditional publishers like Marvel and Random House and doing really do-it-yourself type comics like Faust and the Addiction. Really like comics that are really kind of by two guys and their friends. And, both can be wonderful, but there's so many things that are so smooth when you have that just right relationship with the digital outlet. And there's so many things that go direct into where people live. So it's very exciting to me. So I'm just totally excited by it. I never want to forget it. I always bug anybody I'm working with, like, why don't we have digital yet? And so, Dave and Vincent met and we have digital. We were happy to be one of the first. Thrilled.
I would add to that I think digital comics are the future, but I don't think they'll ever completely replace print comics because I think people like to have a comic book that they can hold in their hands. But you have to understand, one of the obstacles for comic books being sold in America to reach around the world is, first of all, very expensive shipping costs. And you have to actually ship them. And then person who lives somewhere else has to have the space to store all these physical files. Digital comics answers that problem perfectly. You have it all in the palm of your hand. And so that makes it really, I think, accessible, magical, and fun for people. And from what we've experienced, we've seen it a complete embrace for the addiction, for our creation on VeVe and from the VeVe community and family, and we couldn't be happier.
You know, kind of an interesting story that you told, Vincent, was one of your introductions to people from VeVe is you were at a convention and you had some comics up on your shelf, and the person that came up to you was like, well, I have that comic too. Could you tell a little bit about that story and how that sort of introduced you to the concept of it?
Absolutely. It happened to me twice. It happened to me at New York Comic Con. Somebody walked up to me and said, I have that comic book. And I looked at them and I said, oh, cool, that's great. He's like, do you want to see it? And I said, sure, I'd love to see your comic book. And I thought he was going to pull out his photo album and show me photos he took of his comic book. Instead, he pulled out the VeVe app and showed me his collection of comic books on it. And the same exact thing happened. I was at VCon in Minneapolis for Gary Vaynerchuk's convention. We were the representative comic book dealers. And sure enough, the same exact thing happened. It was a different book at that time. I think it was a Daredevil #1. And the person could not, they were like beaming with happiness, showing off their digital comic book. And I just thought, wow, and they even showed me how the reader worked and how you hold it in your hand and you could pages. And I was just like, this is fascinating. And this is the future. And I love it.
Were you going to say something, David?
Yeah, there's another element around the physical where, what Vincent covered is people never gonna, they will forget when they hold on to something great. But with comic today, a lot of people buying them and they're grading them. And in fact, during the COVID, there's a major surge of people going through their attic in their old box and finding all these grill comics and getting them graded. So I think a lot of the users and readers out there are treasuring how they even flip the pages. So the beauty about VeVe is that you can grade your comic. It's going to be on a slab, but your digital version, you can easily read through them a number of times, carry them. One of the things when we launched in South by Southwest, I was quickly able to merge my account with my collectible account and the VeVe digital collectible, VeVe new comic app. And I was able to download it and read it on the fly, coming back seamlessly. So I think that on your palm, that easiness, it will definitely translate to the new audience. And one other thing that David Quinn covered was that, for example, in New Zealand, when we go to a comic retail store, that covers $3.99 retail price is definitely it's a multiple time higher because the supply chain, shipping it, and one of the key element about comic book is that you want to get the comic book as soon as they're available, and VeVe allows you to have that readership, and then you still can subscribe to your traditional. It will just come a couple of months later on the boat. So they definitely have its pros and cons here for physical collectors getting their hands on the read first.
So, Tori, since we've been talking a lot about VeVe Comics, do you want to just do a rundown of the stats that we have on the...
I can absolutely do that, Diana. Let me pull up what our amazing marketing head provided us. We had 21K users on the site in the first 24 hours with a 50-50 split between US-based and non-US-based. 430 stories published about VeVe Comics in the first 10 days, which is amazing. And then obviously, David already talked about the 20th century imprint coming to us. That's Planet of the Apes, Predator, Aliens, all that good stuff. But overall, been a great reception. Obviously, there were some issues with delivery, but as far as I know, the last word that we heard is that all of the orders have been processed or refunds have been processed. We appreciate, obviously, your patience with that. It was a new thing with a lot of moving parts, but I feel like everything's tracking now. And that's pretty much where we're at with VeVe Comics. An interesting thing that, David, you kind of mentioned there was like the supply chain issues, which reminds me of Vincent. Whenever we were at New York City Comic-Con, I was at your booth because you were going for your first ever drop on VeVe, and it was for your own comic. But at the same time, you had the physical Addiction #1 comics in your booth, and you had a line stretched all the way to the door. And within how many hours they were gone? Like, you didn't have any more physicals and you were waiting for the printer, right?
It was pretty amazing. David and I were at the booth, and it's funny because 2 weeks before I was sitting at my office, and I said to myself, "Oh my God, what if we set up a booth and nobody buys our comic book?" So it was incredible. It was beyond our wildest dreams to experience what we did, and it was large part in thanks to the VeVe community. There was a line of I measured it. It's over 40-foot line that wrapped around the corner for the first 4 or 5 hours of the convention. And at one point, we had sold out of certain covers. And thankfully, the shipment came in from Canada that day. And our team at the office, which is right up the block at the Metropolis office, put all the boxes onto 2 carts and wheeled them all the way to the Jacob Javits Center, into the convention center, and into our booth. And we were back in business in no time. It was really amazing. And of course, the other thing that was just unbelievable for us was when we did the drop of all 7,500 copies on VeVe, the first digital comic book on VeVe. It sold out in 1 hour, and we David and I still can't get our copies. Actually, I just bought my first set this past weekend, so I'm really excited about that. Now we have a set for our very own, so it's really exciting.
And sort of on the note of the Addiction, because we're about to transition to talking more about the comic, because we have some awesome stuff to talk about. First appearance, villains, candy-coated, all that good stuff. I've already got my Mila soup dumplings. My wife brought them down. They're steaming in my hands, so we'll talk about that. Don't forget your promo code, VeVe15, for your Mila soup dumplings. We'll put it up on screen. But I'd be interested to know a little bit more about David Q, Vincent, and David U's relationship. How did you all find out about each other collectively? Maybe start with Vincent and David Q. How'd you two meet? How'd the fates align?
Wow. David and I met at a comic book convention. It's funny. I was just telling this story to somebody the other day. We had, run into each other at conventions, and we'd always chat and have these really nice conversations. And he was, obviously promoting the Faust comic time. And I had been working on the Addiction, and then I started talking to him about it. And I asked him if he'd like to be partners with me on this comic book idea. And we soon joined forces. It was like a Marvel super team up, And we joined forces, and it evolved from there. And it was such a great move. I can speak for myself personally. I don't want to put any words in David's mouth, but it was such a great move for me because David is such a fantastic creator and writer, and he's able to take ideas and just like coalesce the vapors of human experience and put them into a comic book story. And together we really built up this great Bible and all these characters and evolved them and changed them. And, we were both really proud to be co-creators and co-writers on the Addiction. David, tell us your perspective on this. I came up to you begging you, please, would you please help me write a comic book?
I think I've found a lot of different collaborators over the years in a lot of different ways, but usually what you find is trust and common ground. And if you don't have that, then it's harder to do anything else. I'm not going to say impossible, because I work with people that I didn't completely trust, and I trusted them to a certain extent, and then we could get something done. But those aren't the people I'm working with for years and years and years. Those are shorter term relationships to make some money and put a nice book out. So I think once you have a basic trust in the person, then you can work everything else out with the different personalities. Our personalities are different. Tim Vigil and I have very different personalities. Matt Pizzolo and at Black Mask and I have very different personalities. But we always find a common. And there's always lots and lots of ideas working with Vincent because, he was enthusiasm, ideas and face-to-face, in your face, selling all his life. He's expert at all those things. So, I mean, but the ideas themselves, everyone has ideas. So then you have to exert cooperation and discipline and planning and brainstorming, and you have to, somebody has to sit down and write something down that you can then both fix. And so that's what I had. I wrote it down for a little while when it was like, never, ever hesitate to get the work done. So I would write down on my little piece of paper and tape it to my computer. It said, right now, fix later. So I wouldn't be precious, wouldn't try to make the final draft from the get-go, just get something down. And we've gotten a lot of great stuff just by getting something down and then honing it and fixing it and what-ifing it and playing with it and be tweaking something just a little bit. A couple of real interesting things about the addiction. The addiction started, correct me if I'm wrong, it started as a man, right? This was a crime fighter who was a man, and like, you know, Batman and James Bond and lots of other heroes we know. And we let it become a woman. And that what if led to some other things. What's her background? Well, maybe she's an American, but she has Italian and Chinese heritage. And all of the things that we gave her made her richer and more interesting and gave us more ways to put her into situations that were going to make it so interesting for her. Because in a drama, you know what makes it interesting for your character? Putting them in their most uncomfortable position. She's about to go talk to the drug lord Collectibles. She can't stop thinking about the fact that her biological mother was a heroine. And you start to see, like, she has to face that in that moment. In that moment, she's a grown woman, an accomplished woman, a strong woman, a kick-ass fighter, a doctor, a famous doctor. And at the same time, she's a 3-year-old girl who's powerless to help her mother who's passing out. So, you know, we just got all the personal stuff. And so you'll see, issue 2, we get more and more and more into her origin story, and we tease out her relationship with Enzo, which is like a lot of relationships in New York City, and maybe everywhere. You know, I happen to be here, Vincent happens to be here, but you might say, nope, they're complicated in Ohio too, buddy.
So David, when did you find out about the addiction? Like, how much of this story, how much of David Q and like Vincent's collaboration had transpired before you found out about this and you were like, I want that on VeVe?
How I got to know Vincent, he is my dealer for comic book. I went to his stand. Obviously, in every con, there's these outstanding stands, and ComicConnect is one of those sites where you get some of the most sought after collectibles. I got talking with Vincent, and I told, and this is where the story where he told me about he met someone, a couple of guys into the digital comic. And I told him, well, I'm actually the co-founder of VeVe Collectibles. And we had comics, so I was showing him. He got more interested in it. I was looking at some of his work that he had on sale. But Vincent and myself, we hit off straight away where he invited me back in his office. He was going through everything he did for addiction, the whole concept. And there's something really resonate about Vincent and myself is that we both started our business and our career for nothing. Vincent's story is he used to sell comic book on the street, one by one at a time. I remember the time where I go to liquidation sales, pick up retail products, basically sold it in my shop. So that story really kicked off very well. We came from both as a collector. I went to his office where he's at, just everything he had on his wall. There's elements of me is I want to own it. That should be really big in my collection. And the addiction really came in when he went through the piles of artwork and he was showing me, and I have seen the male characters which inspire him to come out as this cover today. And slowly I told him, and it took a long time. It didn't really just happen overnight. It took a couple cons for us to get together and talk about it. Obviously, addiction was in the part writing, and finding artists was very key part. And I was privileged to meet David Quinn at, I think, New York, or most likely New York, and I liked the whole concept. Went through the story. And shortly after, Vincent shared me a PDF of snippets of what's been on the work and what's coming. And I knew that moment that we needed to have independent artists. And this is what we've been talking about. VeVe is not just really for big brands to be on. We really want to encourage new artists, new writers, brands and titles that's not being highly hyped already, to have its own platform. Place pedestal to highlight, and I just thought it was a really, really great fit. Conversation went deeper, and I remember Vincent ring me up while I was in New Zealand one week, and he goes, "Are you sure this thing is going to sell?" And I said, "Don't worry about it. It will sell." And then he goes, "Well, I'm going to go print some physical formats. Are you sure it's I'm not going to be printing them and they're not going to move?" So I rest assure him the Comic-Con, in New York, thanks to all our fans, I really think, the thanks goes beyond of you purchasing it. You're actually giving this character, this book, a life. And, Vincent has amazing creativities about some of the plots of what he sees, this superhero, which is really just a human like us. Could be like, and I thought that's a great story.
Can I just add one thing? Since you talk about the VeVe community, I mean, we were blown away, right? Vincent touched on this, and humbled. And it was like, it reminded me so much of some of the high points of being announced to be writing Doctor Strange, or being announced to be winning awards from distributors for the early years of Faust and getting a lot of attention, or selling our movie, for example. But it was, above all, it was like, we are fans. All of us, everyone on this call is obviously, right? People are beautiful in their passions, really beautiful. They're like, you're dreaming in public. Maybe it's costuming you're into. Maybe you want to go to the opera. Maybe you'd rather go to wrestling. Maybe you just love comics or art or anything. But people are so beautiful when they're displaying their fandom and sharing it. So we made sure when we put together the second issue that we're hyping along the way here, we had a thank you page to the people we met in New York. Many of them had never bought a paper printed comic book before, but because they'd heard about it from VeVe, they had to get the paper one too. God bless them, And others were like longtime comic fans who had something exciting to take home with them that they didn't even know was going to exist. So, I mean, it's like, we're so grateful, and then we had to say thank you. Other beautiful faces, well, not all, sorry. But, we have other books coming, so we can do more of your picture.
And I think it's really important to also mention to those of you watching at home who maybe are just coming to VeVe now, welcome. We're glad you're here. But the Addiction #1 was really amazing for VeVe from a historic perspective, because that was the very first physical and digital comic that we released at the same time. And so for all of us here at VeVe, the Addiction's always going to hold a really important place in our heart, because it set a precedent that had never been set prior to that. So really excited that worked out, and it was as awesome as it was. And with that being said, I think we are ready to start rolling into the Addiction #2. Dinah, do you want to roll out some of the questions we have of Addiction #2? Should we showcase our Mila soup dumpling and maybe talk about why I have soup dumplings? Like, why is that?
Okay. So now, Vincent, what's the story here? I know,
right.
So mentioned.
I am so excited about our partnership with Mila as well as our partnership with VeVe. Let me just tell you how this started. So in our issue #1, we have our product placement and collaboration with Grimaldi's Pizzeria at the Limelight Church in Manhattan on 20th and 6th. And you can go in there today and you can order the Addiction Special Pie which is pepperoni, mushrooms, and truffle oil. So as I'm streaming through my Instagram feed one day, I keep seeing these ads come up for this soup dumpling company. And originally had a different name, and they switched over to Mila, which I like the Mila name a lot better. But I reached out to the owner of the company, Caleb, and I said, hey, Caleb, we're incorporating food into our comic book. This is a New York comic book. It's very food-centric in terms of we wanted a character who actually eats food, and we'd like to incorporate Mila soup dumplings. And his reply was instantaneous. I love it. Our product is all about experience, about customer experience, and we would love to be part of this. And I was blown away because this is the second time I pitched a food company that was on board in 2 seconds. It was really amazing. So then David and I were trying to figure out, like, how do we incorporate this? And actually, this is really exciting. So when I mentioned to David the company, he goes, oh my God, my family and I order those soup dumplings. So he was already a customer. And he loves their soup dumplings. His daughter and his wife love their soup dumplings too. And so this was just like perfect experience to just see come together like that. So then we figured out that, since Nikki is half Chinese and half Italian, half Chinese part, like, she would know how to eat a soup dumpling, and wouldn't it be fun if there was this scene in the comic book where she's teaching her boyfriend, Enzo, who's Italian American, how to eat a soup dumpling.
You could tell by that beautiful B-roll that was collected as my beautiful wife Heather was making me some delicious Mila soup dumplings. Whenever I tried to demo it there in that live premiere stream, they got stuck because they sat for too long, but look at the steam coming off of these. They are ready for us to eat. With that in mind, don't forget VeVe15. That's a promo code you want to enter on Mila Soup Dumplings website. And one thing that's really cool about all of this, you're saying, is this a paid promotion? It is if you get paid in dumplings. The people from Mila found out that we were going to be doing this Addiction 2 promo with Vincent, Zurzolo, and David Quinn, and they overnighted us dumplings, so thank you so much. And now we're going to eat dumplings just like Nikki Tino shows her boyfriend how to eat those delicious dumplings. Let's do this thing. And she's just grabbing it with her fingers, and she's dropping it directly in her spoon. Do you want yours in your spoon? So step 1, spoon. Step number 2 is poke. My chopstick. Have you already done yours?
Yep, I was waiting for you.
It's time to poke. So I'm going to spear mine right at the base. Oh, and look, the soup's coming out. And now we spread in size. Oh man, look at all my soup coming out. And now we slurp. And now we've taken too much time, but again, VeVe15, use that promo code, get yourself some delicious soup dumplings, and now, back to the live premiere. Ting.
So we love working with Mila soup dumplings. They're fantastic. And the way we found them, this is a scene from the comic book where Nikki is teaching Enzo how to eat soup dumplings in a kind of sexy manner. I don't know if Corey's going to be eating them quite the same way, but maybe he'll try. So we got connected to Mila when I saw them on my Instagram feed. I contacted the owner of the company and I said, hey, Caleb, I'm doing the comic book and we'd love to feature your soup dumplings in it. And he said, I'm all about customer experience. I love the idea. Let's do it. Really fantastic way to combine our comic book with a great food product and also to share it with the members of VeVe. Hey, you guys are going to get 15% off. Nobody else gets 15% off. And I negotiated that deal for you. So when you're eating those soup dumplings here, oh my God, thank you, Vincent. These are so good.
Thank you, Vincent.
Slurp,
I was going to eat
bread.
some for this video, but what happened is they got steamed at the start of us talking, which was about 56 minutes ago. So now they are stuck. So what I'm going to do is, through the magic of post-production, is I'm going to add in a cut of me enjoying these delicious dumplings in 3, 2, 1. That's where I'm going to put it. Now we can move on.
And you can use the voice over the mantra that I gave you before.
Ah, perfect. Perfection.
Spoon, poke, spread, slurp, Right.
I have one more piece of art to share with you guys.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of issue 2, this is a fantasy scene, a dream sequence, so to speak. We notice the gigantic steamer on the table, and while Enzo croons a love song to Nikki. I always get choked up when I talk about Enzo and Nikki because they really are a beautiful couple, and it's an important part of our comic book. The romance between these two is really, really important to the story and the overall idea. But what's also important in number 2, and I want to do my elevator pitch for number 2 right now. You guys ready?
Go for it.
Here's my elevator pitch for number 2. Dumplings and dancing and love. We learn more about Nikki, Enzo, and the art of eating soup dumplings. But there's more. Action abounds with this number 2 bombastic issue. Every great hero has a great villain, someone who pushes them to the extremes and makes them better, fiercer hero. Batman has the Joker. Spider-Man has Venom. And Nikki has the candy-coated supercriminal known as Mr. Licorice. Along with his cute but deadly sidekick, Bat Noir, Mr. Licorice makes his debut, causing mayhem and chaos for Nikki and Enzo. The Addiction number 2 is an exciting read, and as super collectible as it is, a fiendishly fun first appearance.
That is a promo. Some applause for you. No one does promos in this business better than Vincent, I'm telling you.
Well,
thanks.
see, what did I tell you about enthusiasm? In your face.
and here's a drawing, a page from the Addiction number 2 with the first appearance of Mr. Licorice. And you can see he looks tasty and outrageous and ridiculous, but deadly as all get out.
I was just telling them, Vincent, I think when you had cut out that it's important not to underestimate your villain. And these people are so crazy and over the top and so narcissistic and wild that at the beginning, Nikki is just stunned. She's just fought cartel soldiers, and she's been obsessing about the night that, you know, the mob tried to kill her. And then she walks into what she calls the express train to Crazy Town.
So, yeah, let me tell you a little bit about the design for Mr. Licorice. I pictured him kind of like a little bit like an Elvis type character in the sense that, you know, he's larger than life. And so we put him in a 70s style jumpsuit, one-piece jumpsuit. And then we wanted to adorn it and have everything he does is candy themed. And a lot of this was from inspiration from the old Batman TV show in the 60s with Adam West and Frank Gorshin, and everybody else and one of the wonderful villains then. And so we made him like have these like candy canes all over his costume here. He's got these wrist gauntlets that look like those little red and white candies that you used to get, hard candies when you were a kid, that nobody liked. And then you also, they look like that. They have these gauntlets here that shoot out super tensile licorice. So it's kind of like almost like his spidey webbing. Everything is like candy themed, all his weapons. So he has razor sharp candy canes that he can throw. They're incredibly accurate. And then he has even around his neck, he has the little candy necklaces that we used to get when we were kids. And God knows what they do. And I wanted him to have kind of like a long plume of reddish orange hair. And so I just wanted to make him look as colorful and like candy like as possible. And this design, by the way, goes all the way back to the 90s. He was originally, we originally called him the Twizzler. And the first drawing was done by Louis Small Jr., who was a popular artist in the 90s on Vampirella. And then we realized later on that you can't use the Twizzler because of Twizzlers. So we changed him to Mr. Licorice, and here he is today in all of his glory.
Love it. Take us into the writer's room for a minute, David. Like, you kind of talked about Vincent seems to be a little bit more of like a pantser, a seat of his pantser, like lots and lots of ideas. And there's pantsers and there's plotters, I think, whenever it comes to writing. Some people take a lot of time and they make an encyclopedia of everything and they subplot everything. And some people just sit down and they do the work and then they figure it out after. Talk to us a little bit about how these characters developed. What was the process for you for that?
I alluded a little bit earlier to making things uncomfortable for the character. That's what happens. And when you're watching a good drama, you don't you come to love these people, and you don't want them, to be uncomfortable. But that's what makes the story interesting. So we looked at all the layers of these people's personalities and things that they might be obsessed with at times. The family they grew up in, their dreams in life, or they're feeling like, hey, I can't tell if he's in this relationship with me because he loves me, or is it perhaps my chemical powers accidentally, weaving a spell. So that takes a lot of a very playful and chaotic process of back and forth ideas. What I'm trying to say is you want to be efficient and on point and precise, almost poetic, not like poetic like Elizabethan, but poetic like not wasted words. You don't have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of images, and you're just going to have a certain finite number of images and words you can put with them to make people feel the most they can feel and get the most idea of what the story is and what the feeling is behind it. So there's also a whole, almost like a discipline of getting rid of anything that doesn't put your story forward. Save it for later. You'll use it. And focus on what this story is about and what's the crisis today and how do they solve it.
One of the other things I would say is creating stakes. You want there to be stakes. There's people's lives are in danger in every issue of this comic book, and you're on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen next. One of the other things I wanted to say about writing and creating the addiction is, thank God I have a partner like David Quinn, because there were many times as a less experienced writer, I had a lot of doubts on which way we were going, and we'd set a whole thing in motion, and then I'd go, wait a second, what if we went this way? And Dave would be like, nope, this is good. And I go, okay, yeah, it is good. You're right. And let's keep rolling along with it. And so that was very helpful for me. And as David said earlier, and very intelligently, you just write it down, you get it rolling, and then you figure it out later, what needs to be cut, what needs to be changed. And I think we crafted a really fun 3-part story that I think will have you on your edge of your seat till the very end.
Normally on VeVe, we release 5 variant covers, common, uncommon, rare, ultra rare, secret rare, but this, we're getting 7 covers. And so an unprecedented event, very true to Vincent, doing unprecedented things. Talk to us a little bit about those 7 covers, the artists behind them, inspirations.
Okay, where do I start? First of all, there's 2 of the covers right behind me. Cover by Andres Labrada for number 2, with Nikki facing off against our upcoming supervillain and his sidekick pal, Mr. Licorice and Bête Noire. And then over here, we have the incredible cover by Amanda Connor and colored by her husband, Jimmy Palmiotti. They are old friends of ours and were so gracious to work with us. There's so many things I could say about covers, but the old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover. Well, in comic books, you might not be able to judge it, but you're probably going to buy it because of the cover. So we wanted to make sure our covers were going to sell.
What's the big picture plan with the addiction? Curious.
This first story was always planned as a 3-part story, but we'd really like to follow a model of a series of miniseries come out. It's not unique in comics, especially in the post direct market era. It's kind of like, there's a story and then it comes back when there's the next story. Some stories might be 3 issues. Some might be 1 80-page giant. Some might be just a normal size 24-page story. But trust us, we have a lot in that Bible of different places we could go. And sometimes I even go wow, we're gonna have to do this for a while to get to even use up half of the things we say we could do and we want to do. We also have a secret 0 issue. Should I tell them about that or not tell them about that?
Oh, sure. Let's go. Yeah, let's talk about it.
We don't dwell on this a lot because things have really changed a lot in the story since then. But there was a previous version when we first met of this story in the late 90s. And Aletha Martinez drew an issue that we wrote together. And it's a different version of Nikki. And it's sort of Nikki in that time. And in that time and the way things looked and felt then. Maybe it's just because I'm living here now, but I actually like today's version the best. I think we've all grown up more, and we can tell a more interesting story and a more nuanced story. And we have all sorts of technical things that help us a lot, from our computers to our digital publisher to our connection with people all over the globe instead of just hanging around New York. Because, I mean, we were global in the 90s too, but not like we are now in the comics industry, right? So, I mean, if we put together a hardcover edition, maybe a nice high quality library edition of the first story, the first 3 issues, about 90 pages, we could also include things like scripts and behind the scenes art, and this 0 issue that's never been published. Kind of like, you know, a what if? What if The Addiction had come out in 1997, right, Vincent? What else?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the early Addiction was really wonderful and fun for us to create. And there are still elements of it that will probably find their way into our storyline at some point. But it would be really fun to share that with people in a compendium, or maybe a standalone as well. Who knows? I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be like, but it's going to be pretty exciting.
I would love to take you back to how you started in comics. Like, when did you start collecting comics? How did your passion for comics come about?
David? I'm waiting to hear. I don't know all your exact origin story, so I'm interested in hearing this one.
Okay. I experienced comics for the craziness at the beginning. Somehow I got a hold of Mad Magazine when I was very, very young. And this led to finding all sorts of other things that the same people had done at other publishers. I was lucky to have little reprinted paperbacks of Mad Magazine that came out 20 years before I was born. Or maybe that's exaggerating, but you know, before 1974 when I was reading them. You know, I also loved stories that had humanity and heart and a little bit of absurdity, like Peanuts, right? And the cartoons of Jules Pfeiffer. And later I discovered, obviously, Marvel and DC Comics. And I came along to sort of become a comic shop buyer. Used to ride my bike down to the Ann Arbor store and pick up Doctor Strange and Tomb of Dracula and, you know, maybe something from DC like Green Lantern, I don't know. And became that sort of weekly or bi-weekly at least fan addict. And then I didn't think about it. In the front of my mind, when I went to school and thought I loved writing music, I loved writing plays, I loved trying to produce my plays. So it wasn't until I was in New York as a college student later, doing some off-Broadway scripts that I'd written, and found I can put on a play, I can write a song and record it with my band. I can be proud to have a professional stage for these works. And I can't make a living at this. And I actually dreamed of, I'm not going to be living like this forever. I'm going to have a family someday. I'm going to have all the things in my life that I want to have and have the crazy arts career. I mean, because I've got one foot in domesticity and being the dad, and the other foot in, insane characters screaming at each other. So anyway, that led to, and this is where we have the aha moment. That led to a meeting. I was fixed up on a blind date, so to speak, creatively, not romantically, with the artist Tim Vigil, who at the time was very famous for a book called Grips, which I know at least Vincent is very familiar with.
I love Grips.
Yeah. And he had been encouraged to do something else as violent as Grips. And I had the chutzpah to tell him, well, I've been working on a couple of plays about people in hell. And I found that by the time I gotten through college and been writing for a while, I realized I'm really turned on by stories where someone takes a dark journey. And this is a very, very old story. It's not not unique to me. Um, we've been telling the story around the campfire since we could make fire. Someone goes to a very, very, very dark and scary place, including all the things that you have inside you that are dark and hard to own up. And they come out with a little bit of light, a little bit of salvation, a little bit of either being a light for other people or making a sacrifice that saves somebody or saves the world. Finding the light in the darkness was like, that's it. And so that was what we did with Faust, which, that might sound like a very philosophical way to put something that's also been called, hell and gore and twisted sexuality and don't let your mother catch you reading that, young man. But that's what brought me to comics. Once that got out, I was fortunate enough to finally be able to do writing that could make my living.
My journey into comic books starts in a similar way in that I loved comic books when I was a little kid. I loved them before I could even read. I had two big brothers that collected comic books, and I collected them and traded them with friends all through elementary school and junior high school. And when I was about 15 years old, I started buying and selling vintage comic books, and I did it all through high school and college. And when I graduated from St. John's University, I started selling comic books on the streets of Manhattan. I used to set up with 2 card tables, 8 boxes of books on Broadway between John and Maiden Lane in the financial district of Manhattan. And it was a really fun way to make a living at that time. And you just never knew who was going to walk by your booth, your stand on the streets and buy something from you. And it started off really slow, but I remember I had my best day in that summer of 1993. I did $700 in sales. I was really excited about that. And what was really cool is every day after work, we stopped at 3 p.m., drive back to Rockaway Beach where I grew up, park my car, put my books away, and put my shorts on and run up to the beach and play volleyball with my buddies until the sun set around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. It was really fun. Fast forward that through merging companies with my partner, Stephen Fischler, within Metropolis in 1999, all the way up to 1996, I co-founded Big Apple Conventions. 1999, we merged companies with Metropolis and co-owner of the biggest dealership for vintage comic books in the world. In 2003 to 2008, I hosted Comic Zone Radio, which was one of the most popular radio shows, internet radio shows about comic books, and it's still out there. And we're launching a new podcast called Rare House, which will be really exciting. 2007, we started ComicConnect, our auction site. So many fun parts of this and so many exciting parts in this journey in comic books. And one of my dreams was to make my own comic book. And what had happened for me was during the pandemic, every day we were facing our own mortality. You don't know if you're going to touch the wrong thing and you're going to die or what's going to happen to you. So one morning I woke up and I said, my gosh, if I died tomorrow, what would I have regretted not doing in my life? And the first thing that came up was making my own comic book. I called up David Quinn immediately after that and said, David, thinking about getting back to work on The Addiction, what do you think? And I couldn't have got a more enthusiastic response from David. He was so excited and so happy to hear from me and to get back to work on The Addiction. It was just such a great moment. It was something I'll never forget. And we decided to begin it as a passion project and not put too much pressure on ourselves. But at a certain point, I said, I really wanted to get out a product, a comic book, in 2023. It's a piece of art, and it's a story, but it's also a product. And I wanted to make sure we had a physical comic book out in 2023. And David said to me, we're really pushing it because this is like really tight deadlines because if we want to get this for New York Comic Con, it's going to be pretty tough. And I didn't listen to him. And there are many moments where I regretted not listening to him because there was a lot of pressure. And when we got our first shipment of the comic books and 30% of them were damaged, it was a nightmare. And I was like heaven and a nightmare all in the same day and all in the same moment. So you had this great moment where all the addictions came in, and then some of them were damaged, but we had them and we were ready to roll. And then we got the signage made and the booth made and designed everything and laid it out. And we put this plan together. And we had a great team there. We had our addiction models, Helen and Jules, who were fantastic. Anybody at New York Comic Con knew that they brought some fantastic positive energy to our booth. David and I were there. Andrew Wilson was there, our designer for the first issue, as well as Andres Labrada, our cover artist, and Claudia Balboni flew in all the way from Italy. So it was just spectacular. We had such a great time, and it was again, beyond our wildest dreams when I think about that first day at New York Comic Con. And thank you again to everybody out there.
Do you have any other questions you want to roll through, Diana?
Yeah, I think the only last one I had, because I'm all about teaching and educating the next generation of creators. Do you have any advice, Vincent, David? Do you have any advice for, up and coming writers, creators, retailers, anyone who's just super passionate about comics, wanting to build a career in the comic book industry? What advice do you have for them?
I defer to the master.
Well, I gave you my mantra already. Right now, fix later. All right. So that's one for just about anyone who wants to make things. But broader than that, if you're including everyone who's entrepreneurial, I would say right now, fix later. But you make that a metaphor for whatever it is you do. Don't let anything stop you, because it's human nature to find something else to do in your distraction or in your moment of less confidence. Pretend you're confident and act like you're the kind of person who is confident and do a little something. And then if there's anything there that's good, do more. So, I mean, that's really basic, but that's what it comes down to every day for people that do this. And the difference between the person who's making a nice living and maybe has their website full of awards they've won or just sales they've made of whatever it is that they make. The only difference is they've finished it and put it out there. That's a risk, right? I mean, my partner would not have become a huge retailer overnight. He had to be the kid selling comics in the street, right? But he took that risk, and step by step, boom, biggest retailer of those classic comics there is.
I would add to that. I say a way to say it is, anytime you're procrastinating, the best way to beat procrastination is just put it off. Stop procrastinating. So it sounds simple, but I think it actually works when you just say, I'm just going to get to work on this. The way I'm talking about this, it sounds like it's a lot of work, and it is. If anybody had told me how much work it would be to make our very own comic book, I don't know if I'd be here right now, because, oh my God, there are so many nights where I'm working till 2 a.m. trying to figure out stuff and filling orders on it from our website. By the way, we have a great website, theaddiction.co. And if you want to order some great addiction comic books or prints or metal cards, you can order them now at shop.theaddiction.co, or to learn more about our comic book, theaddiction.co. So there's my sales pitch.
Do you have jackets on there, Vincent? I noticed you're wearing some addiction swag.
Yes.
Is there swag as well?
Yes, this is a one of a kind. On Valentine's Day, my wonderful wife gifted me this jacket, which she's been working on since the summer. So this was supposed to be a Christmas present, but as you can see, the back of it has got the VeVe Blue logo on it, and VeVe Blue edition. And there's also chemical compositions on this, slices of pizza. You've got THC, serotonin, caffeine, and endorphins. We've got we've got soup dumplings right here for Mila. So we got the soup dumplings here. Got my last name here. You got the things there. You got the addiction logo. Got some syringes and pills. And so I proudly wear this to conventions now. And I can't tell you, it's happened many times, either online or at the conventions, where people are trying to buy my jacket. And I'm like, you can't buy this one. But maybe there'll be some special prize in the future where we'll figure out a way to design more addiction jackets with different covers and have them as special merch, or maybe they're prizes for contest winners. We're trying to think of all these different ideas for number 2. And I think we're going to launch one contest, which you guys are going to be privy to beforehand. We had this great contest on X where people drew different ideas and covers for the addiction. Now we're going to do one where it's going to be a Mila and addiction contest, where you draw a scene with Nikki or any of our characters, any of our crazy cast of characters, eating a soup dumpling or something to do with soup dumpling, and we're going to pick a couple of winners and send out some prizes. That's going to be really fun too.
David, can you give us some final words to those viewing from home about the addiction number 2?
Reality is up for grabs, and she can drug you with her touch. So grab the addiction.
I like it. Vincent?
Dumplings and dancing in love, and wait till you get a load of Mr. Licorice.
I love it.
Sweet.
And with that being said, we are wrapping up this live premiere. This is the end of it. Thank you so much to everyone that was able to come. David, you, who's not here right now, thank you for coming in there for the intro. Diana, the co-hostess with the mostest. It's always a pleasure to be working with you. And David, Q, and Vincent, I can't wait till we get to chat again about comics. And hopefully in the future, whenever we do these live premieres, if we do these live premieres, marketing head, we're looking at you. We like these. We want to make these just general discussions. So if you enjoy this type of content, let us know down in the comments. And until the next video, keep collecting.